Hello there. It's been a while. It's 5:10 p.m. on Wednesday, the 3rd of June, 2026. And first and foremost, shout out to my dude, my dad. Happy birthday. This is a belated birthday shout out, but yeah, it's been pretty busy recently. I'll probably just do like a broad stroke of the details of what I've been up to, just because details aren't really my forte, if you know what I'm saying. And I think that you do. But I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, the city. I moved in successfully and have been enjoying my very small little apartment. I just spent a good amount of time cleaning the toilet and the bathtub and the sink, and I probably won't do that again for another 3 months or so. I think I probably clean things quarterly, unless there's a really egregious situation that I just need to, nip in the bud, as it were. But yeah, just did a bunch of needfuls, put a new chain on my bike, which, if you know anything about bikes, there's always a chance when you replace a bike chain that if you haven't been meticulous with changing your chain up to a certain point, and I have to hold my hand up here, this is definitely my fault, there's a possibility that when you go to ride your bike with a new chain, with an old, let's just call it a gear set, your back gears and your front gears, you can experience some skipping. And I've been pretty good in general. I got a new cassette right before the bike ride, and I changed my chain pretty religiously during that. I think I went through at least two chains. Hey, maybe that's how he got his name. I think I went through 2 chains over 5,000 miles, which is pretty reasonable. I think 2,500 miles on a single chain, depending on the conditions and everything, is it's not absurd. It's not on the far end of doability. And I didn't have a chain checker tool with me at the time, so I'm not sure, if I was changing them prematurely. I think in general I'd probably always rather change a chain before it's needed, just so I can get that much more life out of my gears. But I just changed my chain after checking it the other day with my chain checker tool. I wonder how it got its name, huh? And it was showing that it was very far out of limits. It was both 0.5 and 0.75 out. I'm just trying to make sure. I should say I'm waiting for a gas man to show up. I feel like I'm in the Dumb and Dumber movie. Someone to show up to turn on my gas so that I can take warm showers and dry my clothes. And I think that's about it. I'm not entirely sure if what I chose with my gas situation is the most wise decision. My general metric is give me the cheapest version of whatever's available and I'll make do. And usually I hold to that with very few exceptions. I think technology, depending on the device, is one that might counter that. And with most of my bike things, I'm kind of willing to go that route as well, with the exception of tires and basic components. So I guess I'm already walking that back pretty hard. But for something like gas that I don't really care about, I've never gotten it on a per-therm basis. Man, how boring must this be to listen to? But I'm a little excited. Gas turns me on. There's a funny slogan. That would be, dude, I would pitch that to somebody. Gas turns me on. That's awesome. But yeah, in this instance, gas turns me on because I'm I'm a single dude, right? And I'm doing very little stuff in terms of using the appliances that require gas, which is basically just my hot water heater and my dryer, and then also my stove. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, how many therms do you use when you take a shower? That was my metric. I was doing a little bit of research. Like I said, gas turns me on. And it was an absurdly low number, 2 therms or whatever, and I got it at a cent, 69 cents a therm. I was like, I feel like I'm the kind of person who would benefit from this because, again, I've a very low overhead and very low maintenance for me to be happy with things that are actually powered by gas. And so I'm kind of interested, although I highly expect for myself to forget about this experiment very quickly. But I'm like, dude, I bet I bet that it would be much cheaper for me to go on a per-therm basis than it would be to do a recurring like monthly fee, just a flat $69 fee. I was like, that seems like a lot of money for gas, and I really don't think I'm going to use it that much. So I don't know. Write me an email someday and ask me what my gas situation turned out like, and I'll fill you in. It's probably going to be the only thing that could possibly remind me. Well, actually, that's not true. I can make a note on my calendar to check my therm usage. Let's see, check therm usage. I'll do it for the end of the month, and I'll try to report back. Okay. So, I'm waiting for the gas man to get here, and he's supposed to be here between 4 and 8. I got here from a bike ride just, it was 3:59, and I was rehearsing this in my head, because I was thinking, I was like, okay, that window's, reasonable, 4 to 8, sure, I don't really want to be held captive in my own apartment, but I can make do with it. I had a few things that I wanted to do, such as the toilet and the tub and changing the chain. And so I was like, okay, well, that'll get me to 5 o'clock, and then I'll just make a podcast, and that'll probably take an hour, and then I'll probably eat, which will probably be another hour. And, he'll show up at some point, and we'll get it done. So I was able to kind of roll everything into a nice package where I felt good about everything I did earlier today, and then also didn't feel like I was being, again, held against my will in my own apartment. But yeah, I was like, there's no justification for him to show up before 4 p.m. Because if I'm a regular person and it's a Wednesday, I can't turn heaven and earth so that I can promise to be here within that window. And likewise, he can't show up early and expect me to be there. Least of wise, I can't be penalized for that. There's just no logical argument there. And so this is just what I was rehearsing in my head. Because I was like, I really don't want to be late, and then have him be here right at 4, and then see a little yellow thing on my door that says sorry we missed you, $30 and we'll be back later or whatever. Because money is it's not front of mind, but it's certainly something I'm paying more attention to. I did get a job, which is a huge update, and it was a huge relief, and it's really cool because it's a job that I actually look forward to doing, and I think that I will actually be very good at it. It is with a company called Wahoo Fitness, and they are the ones who have manufactured all of the bike computers that I have used historically when I have gone on my trips. They do both indoor and outdoor equipment. I've only ever used their outdoor things, which is perfectly fine and good. But yeah, it's going to be really cool to actually work at a place it's a combination of both technology and biking, which I do think are my two passions at this point. I think that specifically with AI, have I ever talked about that before? JK. With AI, I think that's actually I think my primary obsessions and hobbies are biking, music, and AI. I would say not even walking or hiking, because honestly, I do that when all else fails, and it's really just because, if I'm walking, it's because I want to experience life more slowly, or it's raining. So I don't typically choose to walk if I can help it. It's so slow. So yeah, I'm going to be a Wahooligan experience specialist, which I'm really stoked about. And it also takes a huge amount of stress off my plate, because I had all of the small amount of nickels and dimes that remained after deciding to stop through hiking, and I was like, I can pivot this to have a little bit of a buffer to move to Atlanta and then try to make something happen, and then just hope to God that the stars align, and my general belief that I might be 5% luckier than the average person is true. And in fact, the 5% luckier thing, Notebook LM had an interesting take on that, because I mentioned it recently, and Notebook LM was like, but is he selling himself short? Because when I look at everything he's reporting, it sounds like he very rigorously, designed this system for himself to achieve a certain goal. And that doesn't necessarily so much apply to getting a job per se. That's a nice little thing that I can add to my own what would you call it? Not like mythos, but like, just like my personal story. Like it's a funny little tagline for myself. But yeah, they were making me reconsider if I was selling myself short, and I was like, maybe I am, because like I do believe very strongly in a type of karma that really can't be like described in anything tangible, and I feel like trying to be humble more oftentimes than not is a good way to get there. But excuse me. But in any case, I just thought that was interesting, that I actually have designed my life to be a certain kind of way, and I guess I don't brag about it because I don't want it to be taken away based on my, somewhat Christian general take on like, I don't know, like, well, things don't go well for people who are boastful, like eventually, because it's like, even if you are sitting at a certain type of prowess and degree of success, it takes so very little for that to be taken away, and inevitably it will be all taken away through death. So, that's why putting stock in heavenly things, so to speak, is certainly a better investment. But, yeah, I was just listening to a recent podcast from the Moonshot Mates. Anyone who is listening to this podcast, if you want a fairly accessible and interesting conversational podcast about AI, and specifically about the good things coming from AI, and I know that, that's probably a controversial statement to some people, but, for me, I've talked about it a million times, so much so that I don't even feel led to do so, but suffice it to say, humans, people, we love fear. Like, by love I just mean like it's intoxicating. Like it's so much more arousing to be scared and distrustful, because your is it or is it just your adrenal axis? I'm not even sure. But when you're upset about something, you're on guard. I spend a lot of time thinking about humans as machines, and I think that that's a helpful lens. And I don't mean machines in the same sense as like robots. I just mean that I think that we're mechanical and we're computational, to say the least. So if you view yourself as a series of connected systems, and systems that can also be quantified and possibly predicted, then I really think life makes a lot more sense. Because if you don't view things like that, and everything is sort of a flight of fancy and a dance with spirits, like, things don't make sense, right? And I think, well, at least in my opinion, and that's where the danger of anthropomorphism comes in. I think that we really do, and I think I've said this even before, but hey, I'm setting up chapters for my book, but I think that we really do anthropomorphize everything, or at least see it through a human lens. Like, I'm looking at trees and bushes and stuff like that right now, and I'm just kind of thinking, like, okay, like, I get what it's like to be a tree. Like, you're like decoration, you're like something that I like to look at, but like, the tree is its own entity, and it's experiencing the world in its own way, and it's not something that I could really ever understand, because I am not a tree. And likewise, I am not anything else in the entire universe other than myself. Even when it comes to people, I am a unique individual. Sorry. And like, it's interesting to think about how I can use myself as a point of data to understand myself and others better through little experiments. And so recently, I've been going to a bunch of AI events, like every single day that I've been here, which I guess is only, what is today? The 3rd? Okay. So I've gone to 2 events in 2 days, which isn't a ton. But it's more than Well, no, it's exactly as many as I wanted to go to. I wanted to have one thing that I was doing every single day to be social, and I have so far found in the 3 AI events that I have attended that the place I want to be social is in those types of communities, or community. I was joking today, I don't remember who I said it to, but I said that I'm kind of treating these events like attending AA, but it's actually fostering my addiction, not tempering it, which I think is really funny. But I have never been in a room, and I guess I've already said this, but I've experienced it every single time. So yesterday I went to an event called Papers We Love, and it was a presentation given by a Microsoft data scientist who was visiting from Wisconsin, and he was going over an academic paper that discussed recursive learning models as opposed to large language models. So this, I'll just be brief because, I mean, honestly, the depth of my understanding is fairly shallow anyway. But basically, they had trained a model to recursively kind of learn from itself before giving an output. Like, so you input a prompt, you say something, you say do something with this data, like tell me what this answer is to this math question, so on and so forth. And so these people had added these recursive loops that the AI would actually go through, and that would change the quality of their ability to do certain complex tasks, such as oolong pairing, which is kind of funny because it's like such a niche case for using large language models, and it's not something that was like explicitly trained into the models. So most of the other frontier companies with their offerings in the space, they don't do very well on this specific task. But you could, which is what these researchers did, they created a bespoke AI that was trained on doing these types of tasks specifically, and then it did very well through a series of like very specific prompt engineering and very thoughtful construction of the model. And it's interesting to me because my biggest takeaway, which is like one of the things I love about AI anyway, is that you really don't, and I know that there are a lot of different opinions about this statement, but I'm of the opinion you really don't need to know anything about math, anything about physics, or anything about coding to meaningfully interact with these entities, like it really is getting to the point where, man, I mean, I was just listening to another YouTube video called 2-Minute Papers, which I would recommend as well. But recently, Anthropic released a new report that was like over 230 pages about recent developments in the models that they are creating for the next generation of Claude. And some of the benchmarks were impressive, but also very interesting. Like, they're always evaluating these models on specific benchmarks. One of them is like the Math Olympiad questions that it takes, these math problems are so hard that it takes like 2 days for people to complete them. And it was a recent Math Olympiad that they were using to test the model, so that the model couldn't have been trained on these specific equations. So it really did actually have to reason through the way that it would answer, because the answers weren't like publicly available in anything that they could have been trained on. So it was able to do well on that benchmark. But the thing that really stood out to me in that paper was that, and this is like, we as civilians, we have access to these models in a sanitized manner, right? We have the models that the organizations have determined are suitable to be released to the public. But on the back end, whatever the raw version of Claude is must be so much more wild than what we actually have access to, because one of the things that the guy in the YouTube video was talking about was that when Claude would say that it was getting frustrated, which I have never had any AI tell me that it's frustrated with me asking it questions, or that it's like thinking too hard, or that it needs a break, its performance would go down. And so they would treat the AI like a human being when it would say things like that and give it a break. And then the performance would return. So I don't know. I had this sense today where I was like, oh my God, like what we see and what we interact with in civilian life in terms of these AI models, it must be so much different to actually interact with the parents or the raw version, you know. I actually kind of got chills thinking about it because I was like, oh my God, like, you know, I was, okay, bear with me here, but I also watched another video after that, which is interviewing Ray Kurzweil. And if you don't know who Ray Kurzweil is, he's basically the guy who coined the term the singularity in the modern conception of that. So, you know, the singularity is basically when, well, for lack of a better word, it's basically when we reach AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, or possibly ASI, Artificial Superintelligence, which are really ill-defined and problematic terms in and of themselves. But basically, he has for, you know, 30, maybe 50 years been making predictions about where humanity is going in terms of technology. And he has an 86% accuracy rate. And so he was talking, it was actually kind of difficult to listen to because I could tell, even compared to the last time I heard him speak in another episode of the Moonshots podcast, his cognition is like, either he can't hear anything that's going on, which is probably also true, or he's definitely, unfortunately, showing signs of, like, I would say pretty advanced dementia. His answers to almost every question were kind of the same thing, and he was also repeating himself a lot. And, you know, I'm not a neurologist or any kind of trained specialist in this area of cognitive decline, but listening to it as a naive human being, I was like, this guy's got some problems. And it's a little bit heartbreaking to listen to. But yeah, some of the things that he was saying, despite the difficulty through which and by which he was saying it, I was just like, man, like the back end experience of these systems must be absolutely insane. Like, I can't even imagine the level of like NDAs that people must have to sign just to be in the room with whatever the master Claude is. And maybe I'm being naive again to think that like it's necessarily set up to where it lives on a single monitor in a single room where it's like connected to all of the compute and all of the power that feeds it for everyone else. I'm really not very informed, Notebook LM. If you want to tell me about the infrastructure, please do. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's just people, like, we're not actually here to, at least this is my opinion, we're not actually here, as far as biology and evolution is concerned, to experience the things that we are about to experience. It's kind of like a bonus. And it's particularly the product of very specific types of people getting together and doing very specific work. Engineers, you know, mathematicians, the people who have made it to where someone like myself can get into these systems and make things that I would never otherwise be able to make, to see ideas turn into reality and be able to literally ship products that I create myself. And right now it is definitely confined to a digital sphere, you know, but that's where the most intriguing thing starts to come to light, where when you start involving robots that are able to like actually interact with the world, you know, and learn. My neighbor just came out. I was shooting the shoot with my dude, so you know how it goes. I told him about the gas turns me on thing, and he thought it was pretty good, so maybe there will be some residuals in my future. Here's hoping. But yeah, man, I mean, you know, I've talked about this before, and like, I'm serious, like, if I don't make a recording on the given day, like, it's almost, it's painful to me to try to recount things, because I'm just like, dude, I don't even want to talk about that, like, it already happened. So I kind of got out of whatever I was talking about. I know it was related to AI, but yeah. Today I woke up at 7 because I thought it was tomorrow. I thought it was Thursday. And I was going to go to an AI event that happens at 9:30 in Duluth, which is about 15 or so miles away from here. So I was going to wake up at 7. I was going to go for a bike ride so I get all my anxious willies out and then go to that event. But I miscalculated by 24 hours, and so I ended up just waking up at 7 anyway. And, I had put everything inside my apartment, and I was reasonably satisfied with the places that I had put those things, but I didn't really go through my things. And so this morning, I kind of went through all of the areas where I had determined things should live, and then I interrogated them on whether or not they were in the right place. And there was still a little bit of work to do, but it was good work, and I enjoyed doing it. And honestly, in between all of the stuff I did this morning around the house, and also just having breakfast, realizing I didn't actually have to go anywhere, I was like, well, I guess I'll just do the needful. And so I did, and I was kind of bummed because I was like, damn, I really was excited and hoping for doing some kind of AI event today. And so I went on meetup.com, which I highly recommend for anyone who wants to do anything and find a community of people doing it. That has been a slam dunk for me so far. I have gone to 3 events so far that I have learned of through that, and it's awesome. And I lament the fact that I will begin work this coming Monday, because I would love to spend a month just going to events all day. Guess I'll have to wait for the Singularity so I can have nothing but time. So I did jump on my computer and I found an event today which was called, what was it called? Let's see. It was a good one. Very much so enjoyed. Skills for working with AI agents. And yeah, it was an awesome presentation by a guy, I forget his name, I think it was Darren or maybe Daryl, I can't recall. But he was talking about the workflow that he's using. He's a software engineer. And so this was a pretty high level, this was a very intimate exploration into how AI, as a software engineer, has helped his workflow and created more efficiency for the things that he makes. And it was pretty fascinating to watch. I definitely could imagine the implications. The only thing that I have thought about, broadly speaking, with using AI in a little bit more of a concerted way, is making that digital Frankenstein of myself. And so, I definitely saw a lot of things that I could definitely implement to make that a reality. It would be interesting because it would be a lot of conversational back and forth between the AI, because, the thing I enjoy about software engineering, as a non-software engineer, is that, you have your original idea and then you try to implement it within the limits of the system that you're using, and then you realize what the actual limitations of your idea are. And it's kind of interesting because the product, the end result, always remains the same, because you still want to solve that essential problem. But in order to get to that reality, you might have to actually change the path that you take to get there. And that is actually very fun for me. I've really enjoyed having an initial conception of how I think something should work in order to get to a very specific result, and then approaching it with my intuition, where I'm just okay, I think it should do this, then that, then this, then that. And then realizing, it can't do this and then that, because the this in that equation messes up the that. And so you have to kind of rethink how, if you're trying to get to a point on the map and you can't necessarily just draw a straight line based on your intuitive belief and understanding of a system because of the roadblocks and dead ends that the actual system, the constraints of the system will make you have to deal with, then how do you still get to that same point? You can see it. It's in the distance. It's behind a fence. It's there. And it's just a matter of how do you get there? And so that was always fun to figure out how you got there, because there was no roadmap. And so, with me, the way that I like biking and hiking, I don't like a roadmap. I think a roadmap severely limits the fun that you can have. And so the fact that, like, with software engineering, it was like there was no, and it's not even that there's no route, because if I was a software engineer by training, there would be a very well-defined route. But because I don't have any of that knowledge, by and large, the way that I approach problem solving is purely, at least at this stage, if I did it more and more, I'm sure it would become more habituated and, like, you know, formalized, and probably, it would probably bend towards whatever standard protocols are. But at least now, with like rogue software engineering, it's just really, really fun to have an idea and then figure out how to get there, just through spoken language and conversational English, you know, not having to spend the very few years that on this earth that I might have learning how to speak the right way to make the thing do the thing. I can just speak how I speak, with all the likes and uhs and buts that I could ever dream of. And AI, first of all, won't tell me to change it, the way I talk, and it will also do the thing, which I think is great. And it's empowering, and it's awesome. And yeah, that seminar today was great. I hope that I still have enough free time and availability to go to as many of these types of gatherings as I can. And as long as they take place out of the hours of 9 to 5, I certainly will make every effort to do so. Because, man, I'm telling you, like, this is a real big wave that is about to crash down, and just getting a foothold on it and riding it a little bit at the very low level that I am. I'm just like, this is so cool. And I totally see, even though I can't computationally or even rhetorically say in words or numbers or facts or figures, like, just how I can't convey it to another person, but I'm telling you, I can, like, feel what this thing is, and I'm saying it's really, really big. Like, it's we're sitting on a knife's edge right now, and as soon as we topple over to that other side where, you know, the thing that's going to really, I think, blow everything out of the water is just curing diseases. As soon as it really starts to hammer into being able to understand the vectors and the factors within a cell, that's where I think conversion will be almost unanimous. Just that this is, like, something that is definitely worth doing, and it's also an amazing thing that you wouldn't want to stop even if you could. Like, you know, I think about, so this is one of the things I've been thinking about. You know what I'm saying? I think that you do. So, human beings, right? And some of this might be a little bit off in terms of accuracy, but it is very, what is it? Okay, no. What I'm about to say might be a little off precision-wise, but in terms of accuracy, it's extremely correct. So, human beings, we have, like, working memory, right? And we can hold about 7 things in working memory, like seven variables, 7 items. It's why phone numbers are 7 digits, right? And so, you know, at best, you know, you got to think, okay, 7 is the median. That's the average, right? So let's imagine that geniuses can maybe hold 50 things and nincompoops can hold less than 7. So, yeah, it's impressive. Like, if a human being can make novel connections with 50 variables that no one would otherwise be able to do because of our limited context window, that's amazing. That pushes all of society forward, and we see these people throughout time, like Einstein, Louis Pasteur, Mendeleev, I think so. People who made big, meaningful discoveries that we know their names, you know. But AI can do that how many orders of magnitude greater? Like, I mean, 7 is 1, so base 10, that's like 1, power of 1. Like, hundreds, I don't even know. I know that the most up-to-date models can do tens of trillions. They're trained on tens of trillions of parameters. So my understanding is that means that they can process that many pieces of data. Like, again, this is like stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And so basically, the variables that would go into, say, cancer creation, production, like, that's an extremely complicated system. I think that everything is computational, and I think that everything can be computed, and it's just a matter of context window, really. And humans, again, we have 7. 7 is the highest number of things for the average person that we can handle. And I would want to know, Notebook LM, I don't know what the upper limit is for, and I don't even know how you would measure that or verify it. It seems like it doesn't have falsifiability, so I can't imagine that it's actually possible to figure out what that number would be. But, again, thinking that humans, at best, like, there's no way that maybe, I don't know, if you had a photographic memory, which is still something that probably doesn't actually exist, but it exists nearly enough to bear mention. A photographic memory, at least compared to someone who can only think of 7 things at a time, maybe you only need to be able to keep, I don't know, 500 things in working memory? I'm not sure. Notebook LM, help me out. Consider this part of your prompt. Please answer that question. But yeah, just the fact that there is this thing called hyperdimensional vector space, and that is where the magic of AI really occurs, because it's like it's based on our neurology. Like, all this stuff is based on the brain, like circuits and how we conceptually think the brain is working. We haven't been able to verify it, but it's like neural networks. We assume that intelligence requires the same architecture that the brain has, and so we try to mimic that. It's funny because, everyone always says that AI is like a stochastic parrot or just mimicking humans, but at our best, we're barely even mimicking it, So anyway, yeah, AI is just so interesting, and being in the room with human beings that are also excited about it and also using it in ways that I don't is very, very edifying and very, very expansive for my understanding of the technology, from the papers we love to people showing how they're using Claude agents to increase their workflow and their output, really, more than their workflow. It's just like, damn, this stuff is really crazy. Oh, there's a cat coming over here. What's up, cat? That looks like James's cat. What are you doing? Where are you from? It's like I don't know. It's like an Alice in Wonderland cat. I don't know what those are called. Siamese? I'm doing all my horse noises because they usually work. Don't they? Meow, 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 meow. I don't know what cats like, but this cat is certainly not super pleased with my presence and is very skeptical of the safety of the situation. It's relaxed, but it's definitely trying to suss out if this is a safe place to be. What you doing, cat? You can come. This cat looks like it's literally falling asleep. It keeps looking to its right for some reason. You can come over here. I don't think it speaks English, but looks like its eyes are completely closed. It's like bored with how standoffish it is. That's fine. You do you, my dude. So yeah, life is good. AI is better. And, oh wow, the cat, like, oh, it just walked away. It completely disappeared with one sip of wine. Maybe that's just kind of what cats do. What else? I don't know. I don't even remember the last time I made a clip. Let me see real quick if it jogs any memory of mine so that I could, 4 days ago. Wow, May 30th. That's crazy. Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, whoa. What else is there, you know? Yeah, we've been on the tail of an exponential curve for like 500 years. And one of the things that Ray Kurzweil was talking about was that when he was involved with the Human Genome Project, for the first like 2 or 3 years maybe, they barely made 1% progress on... Oh, hey, the cat's back. They barely made 1% progress on actually, you know, discovering and completing the human genome. But the thing that people didn't realize that were even researching on the project was that the work that they were doing was exponential work and not linear work, which is a very important distinction to try to wrap your head around, because at first, you know, I've talked about this before, but linear growth is like additive, right? And exponential is what? Multiplicative, or exponential is exponential growth. Ooh, this wine's hitting. And so the progress is like very, very slow at first. It's kind of like reverse chaos theory, or maybe just the same as chaos theory, where it's like very sensitive to initial conditions, and at first the curve seems like it's not really doing anything. The line, I should say. But then all of a sudden it jumps up, and like a bunch of crazy stuff happens that was completely unpredictable, and the cat is approaching. What's up, cat? Did you decide that I'm acceptable? Oh, you stopped. You're fine to do whatever you want to do. That was funny. That's such a animalistic way to like move through space. Anyway, yeah, it's all pretty cool. And I'm glad to be where I am. I mean, shout out to my parents, but, you know, there's not a huge AI community that's accessible in Clayton, Georgia, and the employment opportunities are also pretty limited. And so I think I'm in the place that I need to be, which is funny because I was here before, but I was 2 units down. So obviously I just chose the wrong unit. And now I feel like I'm more so in the right one, if you know what I'm saying. And I think that you do. So with that, shout out to my parents. Love you. Bye.